So welcome everyone, take a deep breath. We are continuously experiencing such tumultuous times. And when Amber and I got together planning for this week's webinar and what we wanted to talk about, we had to sort of go off script because we felt that the time was so prevalent to address what's happening recently with the untimely, merciless murder of George Floyd. So, purposefully, we entitled our talk to be Courageous and Conscious Conversations, because so many of us are looking to process our emotions, talk about what's going on, because that is where change can be born. And I'm so grateful. I don't have an opportunity to kind of see the Brady Bunch images because I'm working off of my mobile phone and the screen is really small. But one of the things that has inspired Amber and I is with the news and the social media, we're seeing such an outpouring of compassion and humanity by non-people of color. And to some extent, that's an incredible indication that we as humanity are so outraged that there hopefully will be a collaborative force. So our conversation today is going to be more or less interactive, participatory. We may ask questions of you, but we really want to hear your voices. We've divided our talk today into sort of three segments. What we want to be thinking about in terms of, our thoughts, how we are perceiving this situation, what we want to say to our kids, to our family, to our friends, community. What is it? What are the words that we want to speak that enables us to speak truth to power? And then lastly, what do we want to do? Because movements like this cause us and motivate us and inspire us to take action. We don't want to just sit and be observers. We don't want to be sitting in the bleachers. We want to be playing full out on the court. And lastly, before I turn over this first section to Amber to talk about, the positive psychology aspect of our thoughts, is I was looking up the definition of pandemic, and it really spreads over what we're experiencing now in terms of social injustice, because a pandemic is a prevalent disease that impacts the country and the world. So, it's incredible that, we're experiencing this COVID pandemic, but now what has risen to the surface is this ongoing bias, prejudice, and discrimination. So we are not rid of this disease yet, but hopefully at some point we'll continue to be change agents. So I'll say this, Amber and I are not social or civil rights activists. We are social and civil rights advocates, right? We are, in a lot of instances, even as we were preparing for our talk today, having to immerse ourselves to some extent in research to provide all of you on the call today with some resources that we'll share with you at the tail end. But, it feels good to be playing full out on the court and taking some action to what is our individual role in this to bring about change. All right, so if you haven't already, post in the chat what your emotion is, what you're feeling, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Amber, to kind of tell us more about how our emotions impact how we live through this surreal time.
Yeah. And I'll just start with our emotions are our internal guidance system, and they are meant to direct us to something. And although these times are nothing that I would ever wish to want to be a part of, I think that it's important right now that although we're not feeling good, we're feeling. And in order to heal, we have to feel. And there are lots of changes that have needed to be made. And there's lots of complacency that has been had, and there are so many voices that are saying no more right now. And so, as Michelle mentioned, we just really wanted to come together to give our community a place to connect and to be in a no judgment zone and to have these discussions. So we see you already using the chat, and we thank you. We're gonna read over what's in the chat, and we welcome you to share with us and to share with each other, because we really want to create spaces for us to have this dialogue so that our voices can be heard and we can understand each other. Governor Cuomo was on yesterday, and he was addressing the city of New York, and he said, use this moment to galvanize public support. Use this outrage to actually make a change, and use your intelligence to actually say what you want. Otherwise, you're just screaming into the wind. We have to know what we want, and a lot of us know what we don't want, but I'm really inviting us to get clear and know what we do want. And the way our emotions play a part in that is what feels right to us. We ask you to identify from the emotion wheel how you're feeling. A lot of the answers that I've been receiving to that have been drained, depleted, exhausted, afraid, and hopeless. And what I hope that we can walk away from today is hope from our conversation, and some really powerful action steps that we can all take to move forward. To get us started, I just want to welcome us to just do a little breathing exercise. I was so struck by the words, I can't breathe, because our breathing sustains us. And while we still have breath in our body, we still have the power to make change. And so learning to understand how to regulate our breathing is a really important part of managing our nervous system and being able to show up fully in places to be powerful in our spaces. And so I'm just gonna invite you to do a little breathing exercise with me to center us for this conversation. And we're gonna do the 4, 7, 8 count in breathing, and we'll do it 3 times. So you breathe in for 4 counts, you hold for 7 counts, and you breathe out for 8 counts. I'm gonna talk to you, but I'm gonna do it with you. So, all right, we'll get started. So we wanna start by inhaling, holding, 5 counts. Exhaling, 8 counts. And I said that wrong. We actually hold it for 7 counts and exhale 8 counts. So we'll do it again. We'll inhale for 4 counts as we inhale purpose. We'll hold that for 7 counts. And we'll exhale fear. And one more time, we're gonna inhale for 4 counts, and we'll inhale hope. And we'll hold for 7 counts. And we'll exhale hate. And so when you do that, I hope that you've experienced the calm that comes over you and being able to regulate your breath and just take a moment to stop and tap into your breath and take a moment to stop and tap into how you're feeling. And so I hope you're feeling a little better with that. I know the breathing can't just change the whole situation, but it's just a little thing that we can do. And there's those little things that we do that add up into big things and let us show up and really make a change. So going back to our emotions and asking ourselves, how do we feel? The follow-up question to that is, how do you want to feel? And then what are you willing to do to feel that way? And that's where the solutions come. And that's where I encourage, as coaches, we're always looking to move forward and come up with solutions. And it's not to say that we shouldn't feel. We have to allow ourselves the time to feel the feels. But we don't want to get stuck in negative emotions. When we get stuck in negative emotions, we get in that downward spiral where we start to get narrow in our thoughts. And it feels like the wall is closing in. That's where anxiety and panic and depression come. And there are a lot of people who are feeling that right now. So, and just sharing positive psychology with you like I always do, I was so fascinated by the way our brains work. You know, think of when something excites you. You start to come up with ideas and they get bigger and bigger. You come up with one idea, then you have a few ideas, and then they start to come on top of each other. That is broadening and building. And the way that we work as humans is that when we're in a negative space, we're narrow and focused. When we're in a positive space, we broaden and we build. And right now, I'm inviting us to recognize how we're feeling and how we want to feel, and then start to make that journey towards how we want to feel little by little, and broadening our perspective and broadening our choices of what we can do, of what we can say, and of the actions that we can take. And you'll notice that you start to feel better. You'll notice that when you look at your options and your power to take action, you don't feel as helpless as you did before. And so that may look like donating, that may look like marching, that may look like having a conversation with someone who needs an ear, who needs someone to talk to. That can look like so many different things. But I really encourage you to start small, to start within, and to take small steps to start to connect with the people around you, and then let the beauty happen, let the action happen, and do what you can, because it's up to all of us to do something about this. Michelle's going to talk a bit more about that, and then we're going to give you some concrete action steps, but that's just to get us started. So Michelle, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, so you know, this is where I really wanted to be a bit more interactive. I'm welcoming and inviting you all to unmute yourselves. Because first, I certainly want to hear from those who wish to speak what your emotions are, what your emotion is. And then secondly, on another point, I want to ask, what are you being asked, or what are you pondering that you don't have the answer for? You know, one of the things that maybe coming up in your mind is, I don't even know what to do. I don't even know what to say to my kids. You may have neighbors or friends who are really struggling. And when we're in grief, oftentimes we don't know what the right response is. So again, you know, I don't want to just provide you all a plethora of scripted responses. I want it to be relevant. So Amber, with your support, if they choose to post it in the chat room, but ideally I would love to have you all unmute and, you know, share with us what you're grappling with verbally in communication. We want to coach you in this regard.
Hi, Michelle. Can you hear me?
Hey, Mindy. Yes.
Hi. Good morning. The first thing I do want to say, and a lot of people don't know this, I used to work with Michelle in the city right across from St. Patrick's Cathedral. So we used to spend a lot of time walking the streets, and I personally would go into the church all the time. It's beautiful. And so I'm not in New York anymore. I'm in Florida. And of course, this morning when I put the news on and I saw the horrible graffiti written on the, on the walls on the outside, it was so disappointing, because that was a really happy place for me. And to see that going on smack in the middle of the city was horrifying, so sad. So the whole thing is just so disappointing. I don't have young kids. I don't have to explain it. My kids are older and forming their own opinions. On so many levels, it's just so disappointing. But I think on top of it is that because of where we are in a society, and we're all so politically, or many people are so politically strong and divided, that this has been taken from a horrible situation to right into that political conversation of, the governor and the mayor and the president. And so we're all divided in certain ways, which makes it that much more disappointing. And that's really what I'm struggling with, trying to make sense of what I'm seeing. And where is the rainbow on the other side that I usually see in many not so pretty situations, but this one is really hard to see. So that's, I guess, my big struggle right now.
Yeah, disappointment. So, I think we can absolutely identify with you, Mindy. If there's disappointment, there's heartbreak. I mean, it's on a continuum, on a scale of, just such grief. Maybe on the other side, even though there may be some confusion, there may be some hope. So what I'm sharing is through my personal perspective, right? So take it for what it's worth, everyone, as I support Mindy in what she just said and how many of you out there are potentially feeling the same way. One of the things that I do of late, as part of my morning ritual, but it's been really accentuated, is in my morning devotion and my conversation with God, I've asked, regardless of what your religious beliefs may be, higher power source, whatever you want to call the supreme being, I've asked, please help me see this differently. Help me see this differently. So with the graffiti, perhaps on such a sacred place, with the rioting, with the outrage, hurt people hurt people. So what we're witnessing is an act, certainly by the police officer who, that was such an egregious act of violence. And even with the riots, these are hurt people, right? So I don't know that we will ever really understand it. It's probably going to bring up more questions and a bit of confusion. Yet, if we could allow ourselves to clear our lenses, to see things differently through possibly more optimism. I mean, this is where resiliency is born. Racism has been institutionalized for hundreds of years. And this here in the United States, but I was reading an article recently that it really started with the Spanish Inquisition back in the 1400s. So, it's systemic. So the point is, we may never completely rid ourselves of that behavior. However, when we raise our level of consciousness to be able to look at it through the lens of, I don't want to feel fear. I want to feel hopeful. That may shift not only how we feel, but then it can speak to what we want to say to ourselves, which is, and this is what I tell, people that I know and even clients, and things that you say, I'm fearful and I'm hopeful. I'm afraid and I believe that there is a positive outcome that comes with this. As Amber mentioned, we have to acknowledge what we're feeling. We don't want to deny it. We don't want to suffocate it. We don't want to be, in sort of a Pollyanna state. However, to shift what we're feeling to enable us to have a voice and speak affirmatively to what we could create as a possibility is to shift the thoughts that we have and speak to our higher self and speak to those verbally, whoever's in our presence or conversations that we're having. And we shall overcome. And with the commitment that I'm willing to do, this is the change, this is the difference I can make. So, Mind, I don't know if that helps at all. It's recognizing that, we have the power to look at things differently. And honestly, I always tell others, we can tell ourselves a story, right? A story is purely a judgment and an evaluation and an opinion that we have about what's going on. And if I want to feel okay, even as I persevere and pursue and determine be determined to make a difference and to do something action-oriented around this movement to bring about change, I first need to shift my perspective. I need to shift how I'm feeling. If I'm afraid, I'm powerless. If I'm optimistic, then I'm powerful, right? So that I think is going to be the foundation of us having the resiliency and the courage and the power to do what we need to do. I don't know if that helped at all, Mindy.
Absolutely, and that is normally how I think of things, where if it is a negative, I just naturally will think of, but you know what? The bright side is, I'll always see the silver lining. But I think after coming off of, and we're not even off of the pandemic, we're not even off of, coronavirus. This was just like a swift kick, because we're all dealing with that. And if you notice, it's not even being like, I listened to the news last night. I don't think I heard them mention COVID or coronavirus one time, as if it's gone, because this is so huge, and getting worse. So yeah, there definitely is going to be some kind of bright light that comes out. I do believe that. But this was, like I said, a swift kick to people that are already down and suffering, all colors, all religions, everything. So, but yeah, everything you said absolutely makes sense.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing. Is there anyone else on the call that wants to speak to any kind of support that they may need around, either what to think, how to shift their emotions, or what to say
or
to
just
themselves,
and perspectives, because we want to get a range of voices and perspectives here as well. And I see within the comments, we've got used was one of the comments, which that's strong, exhausted, anxious, but hopeful. And so we want to invite someone else to speak. So please be courageous and step forward and say how you feel.
Hi, everybody. It's Portia.
Hi, Portia.
Hi, Portia.
So I am filled with so many different emotions. On one aspect of it, I am a little upset that I have white friends, I have white business partners, and I know that, they don't want to say the wrong things, right? It's a touchy situation, so they're not sure what to say. But then on the other side of that, I felt offended by their silence. So not sending out, an email to just acknowledge what's going on in the world, or, I don't know, I'm torn between that. So I'm not sure how to handle it with that aspect. I don't want to, walk around as like, the angry Black women. However, I do feel some type of way with the silence of my white friends and my white business partners, etc. Then on a different aspect from that, of course, what happened to George Floyd is devastating. It's affected me on so many levels, because I'm having a conversation with my 9-year-old niece who wants to know, why we on curfew? Why is all this stuff going on outside? She's afraid. And then, I have to sit down with her and have this conversation. And she says, oh, I thought this was over when Martin Luther King Jr. got killed. I didn't know this was still going on now. My friends at school are white and they don't treat me like that. And I said, well, unfortunately, not everybody is like that. Now you have to make her aware that her skin color is a threat to some people. And so that for me is devastating. And it makes me afraid to have children. It makes me afraid to raise my brown boys and girls where, they are looked at and judged differently. And I'm not here for the violent protest at all. But on the flip side, it's like, if I'm reprimanding my child and I'm asking them to do something, they're not doing it when I ask them nicely. Well, after a certain amount of times, I'm not going to ask nicely anymore. I'm going to want to spank them on the hands or whatever the case may be, for them to know that I mean business. So I was out there, marching and protesting for Trayvon Martin and, Mike Brown and all the others. And here we are again and again and again. At what point do we have to take it a bit further to get some type of results. So I'm just so confused about everything.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, was there something somebody wanted to say?
No,
Okay, so Portia, I want to, yeah, because there was two good points that you raised, and I want to address your former, which is the silence of, white colleagues and friends. And I welcome any their thoughts are, but the one thing I want to invite you to do is to suspend taking it personally. That's one of the agreements that we touched on last week when we talked about the 4 agreements, not to take things personally. Silence oftentimes, first off, it doesn't mean anything. And what I mean by that is, in this particular instance, I don't even know what level of pain or confusion or ambiguity non-Black people may even have. And oftentimes, even like when we experience someone passing and we don't know what to say to the grieving family, sometimes we don't reach out to these people. So, this is just an alternative thought to have in terms of why some of your white counterparts might not be vocal or voluntarily reaching out to offer solace, is when you don't know what to say, sometimes you go to radio silence. And our invitation on the receiving end of that silence is to not take it personally. And the other aspect potentially is with whatever the affinity is, the level of familiarity, whether they're acquaintance or friends, or, when you don't get a response, start the conversation. Ask them an open-ended question. That's where the dialogue starts. Don't sit on the other side of the wall of their silence, because that keeps the wall up. Surmount the wall, and this is a metaphor. Have a conversation and say, I haven't heard anything. What are you experiencing because of this? Because I'm telling you, everybody's in pain. I don't know what it's like to be not Black. I don't know what it's like to be white. I don't know what it might feel like to feel guilt or shame, because just because of being white, there's other white people that are demonstrating that hatred. But I, as a white person, may not be feeling that. But people may be putting me in that category simply because the color of my skin. That's how we as Black people are demonstrating racism, by putting white people in the category of, oh, you see, so again, I think it oftentimes just boils down to having a conversation and inviting people to share with us their point of view, what they're feeling, because at least it enables us to not tell ourselves a story of what may be going on in their hearts and in their minds.
And we have a lot of, Portia, I have a question to ask you, but I just want to address, we have a lot of questions in the chat and we're going to address them. I want to ask you, Portia, to also share, not now, but if you think of it and share, we'll come back around to you, what you would want them to say to you. Because I know that there are some people on the call who want to reach out and don't know what to say. And so by you sharing and expressing, it would be nice if someone said this, you could really help them to understand how to reach out to some of their loved ones and associates and business partners as well. So we had, so thank you, Portia, for sharing that. And I do want to come back around to you. So I do ask that you think about that and let us know when you want to chime back in, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Desi, I think you were next with your comment, and then we had Kat. And then I see the other, thank you for messaging me. I see the others. Guys, we're gonna try to get to everyone because we're glad that you're talking and we want to use this time together. Okay, so Desi, you wanna unmute and go ahead and voice your opinion?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for giving this space for people to be able to talk. I think it's important.
Desi, you inspired this. You inspired this. You did last week. You inspired this, so thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. I think that, I mean, of course, there are a range of emotions, but I think what I can offer to this particular conversation, what I think might be helpful in terms of what I'm thinking and where we can go, is that I think it's important that, particularly for non-white people or or for Black people, and I'm speaking specifically about Black people. I think people of color experience a range of marginalization, but it is often in your proximity to Blackness. And so I'm speaking specifically about being a Black-skinned person in this country. I think it's important that we understand that everything that we see emerging, and I'm really trying to keep it together too, to not fall apart, so please bear with me, is that all of these things are connected. COVID, the police, Amy Cooper in Central Park, all of these things are connected. And I think what my frustration is, and I think what is important for white people to understand, is that all of these things are not happening in a vacuum. They're not happening in a bubble. Amy Cooper behaved the way that she did in Central Park because she understands the levers of power in this country and how they disproportionately benefit white people. And so it's important to understand that, oh, we're talking about this, but we're not talking about COVID. People are in the streets because of the disproportionate effect that anytime anything is awful, it is disproportionately more awful for Black people. And I think it's important for people to understand that. I think that it's important for white allies, and I think this speaks to the silence that Portia spoke about. You know, we can't make people care, but I do think it's important that white allies understand that the onus is on them to educate themselves. If you were stuck on the side of the road and you had to figure out how to fix your flat tire, you would go on Google and you would figure it out. And so it's important that white people understand that they can't be like, well, I just don't know. You have to be unafraid to make the mistakes. You have to be unafraid to say, you know what, I may fuck this up, but this is what I'm trying to say. And if I don't get it right, you know, blame my ignorance, but I'm trying, I'm gonna push through. White people have to understand that dogs and windows and buildings can be replaced. Black lives cannot be replaced. So when we start recentering other things as more important than Black people's lives, that's why Black people are upset. And we're not encouraging violence. We're not saying we don't care about animals and we don't care about dogs, but we have to live in a world where we feel like we are just as important as those things. I was on a Facebook thread yesterday where a young Black boy, 20 years old, he said, this is the most important night of my life in the United States of America. And a white woman commented about her baby being born. It felt like an emotional drive-by shooting. She completely recentered herself in the middle of this Black boy's narrative. And those are the things that I think it's important for white people to understand, that the murders of Black people are publicized on television, but those things that happen on that thread, those are the micro and the macro aggressions that Black people navigate this world with every single day. It is like little small grenades that go off every single day in the life of Black people. And I think to think that racism is just using the N-word or, you know, not liking Black people, that is not what it is. It is a system that operates on an everyday, ongoing basis where people are allowed to behave with impunity or center themselves in ways where they're just completely ignorant to understanding how that affects, you know, the spirit and the life and the economics and the education and the safety of Black people. So my plea is for white people, good white people, to educate themselves, because it is not enough to not be racist. You don't get cookies for that. You have to be anti-racist in the world that we're living in.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I just want to add, in addition to, I think it was excellent sort of guidance and direction to get educated, the other piece is to demonstrate empathy. You know, white people may never know what it is like to be Black, but an understanding and a lean in towards empathy goes a long way to soothing the hurt that you know, so many of us feel. Yeah, thank you, Desi. Amber, are there more questions or comments?
There are, yes, yeah, and we could respond to them, but I think that you guys listen to us all the time, and it's so important for us to hear each other. So if someone wants to respond, although we're trying to go in order, so we are going to take the next few people that we have, but we invite you to respond. And even if you respond in the chat, like Deb just gave an amazing response to the very well put words that Desi just shared with us. And so please refer to the chat, because it is 1:13, and unfortunately we're not going to be able to get through to extend this for too long, because we want to respect everyone's time. I think we had Kat that was going next. Kat, are you okay? So I'm just going to say, for your comments, because we're short on time, if we can keep it to a couple of minutes so we can allow time for other people to be heard as well. We'll just try to keep it short from here on out.
Thank you so much, Amber. For me, I just want to thank you for even having this platform, because I was born and raised in Jersey City. I'm putting lights on. I live in Manasquan, New Jersey, and the tundra has arrived. There's something happening. The weather has changed dramatically. I just want to applaud you. And Portia, I love what we're talking about. I think you're absolutely, for me, I'm Hispanic and I have some European background. So I'm basically a mutt. So I've always felt very comfortable learning, and I come off like, I want to learn about your culture. I want to learn about your religion. And I think you definitely pose something that I think right now, the white person, including myself, you're nervous. Am I going to say something truthfully or want to know something? And is it going to be defensive? So one of the things that I just took away from this brief, time that we've been together is, let's educate each other. Let's educate each other. For me, I guess because of my upbringing and my background, I always felt like I got it. Just because things happened hundreds of years ago doesn't mean that they're still not part of who you are. And I'm feeling, hey, I think we're just very cliche, Black Lives Matter, but do we really get it? Do we really understand what's happening? I just had my son went to St. Peter's Prep, and it's a very diverse school, and we have wonderful, we grew up with many Black friends. I still am friends with them. And the one thing I'm feeling right now, I'm like, oh my God, I'm ashamed. I'm like, do they think that for 1 second I applaud, I condone this craziness? But at the same time, when I've gotten to talk with my Black friends, they're horrified at the anger that right now is fueling all these things. So if we can help educate one another, that would be great. I don't know if you guys have seen that he's on Facebook. I'm in love with this man. This morning, having uncomfortable conversations with a Black man, Emmanuel Oko. Oh my gosh, he puts such perspective, and he does bring this woman, Miss Cooper, up. And he says, you don't get it. Those words, I had to write it down because I was like, what? I am being threatened by a Black man. That is a game changer. And that just struck me like, wow, I never realized. Nobody really says, oh, I'm being threatened by a white man. You know what I mean? It just resonated in me with the times that we are. And I thank you for educating, and let's keep on educating each other.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I want to just make mention of the one thing that you said, and I really appreciate you sharing the perspective. It's a trigger for Black people to hear that something has happened 200 or 300 years ago. And I want to bring some awareness around that, because it's still happening for us, and it didn't stop. It just changed, and it's turning into something really ugly right now. So it's not the hope of it went away. That is a trigger for us in the Black community when that is said, because it makes us go, but it's happening right now. So I just want to bring awareness around that perspective for everyone that's on the call, Black and non-Black. That and you can agree with me or not. Feel free to speak about it in the next few people that are gonna talk. But I just wanted to mention that as something to bring some awareness around it. So after Kat, did we have Verna and then Marlo?
Hi there.
Hi, Verna.
Hi, Angels.
Hi,
Thank you
Brenda.
so much for this platform. Thank you. The first speaker, she said, well, where is the end of the rainbow for this? And immediately for me, I thought, this is it. This is it. This is the end of the rainbow, right? This is the end of the rainbow. The veil has been lifted. The gold is truth, right? This is truth facing us. And I feel personally, because I've had the opportunity to be in so many different workplaces, so many different work establishments and structures, and I've had the opportunity to have conversations with my Caucasian brethren over the years, right? Over the years of, you know, when they would say something of like, you know, those people, or like, there they go again. Well, what do you mean by that? And have like real conversations, because for a long time, like, you know, they don't know that, you know, I have a son that when he goes out the door, everyone looks at him as he is a Black child. So I feel like it's my responsibility to have these conversations. But over the years, for sure, I feel like, you know, I walk away from the conversation sometimes defeated. Like they just don't get it. And I feel honestly like vindicated and like validated. Like, see, guys, see the systemic oppression? Like if the game of life were a swimming pool, a Black man, a Black woman has to be like a Michael Phelps to succeed. So I feel like vindicated. And if there's anybody in the judicial system that is on the call today or is a lawyer, what does the bill look like? What does the bill look like? Who do I have to write? What do I have to do? Like, in a sense, I do feel empowered right now to take action. I'm very hopeful. My heart goes out to all of, you know, George Floyd's family. Oh my gosh, this morning on Instagram, I saw George Floyd's brother holding George Floyd's daughter. And they were like, what did he do, honey? My dad changed the world. And I feel like this is it. This is our moment, guys. This is our moment to really, really make that shift in consciousness. And I think we could do it together. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much
for
your ears and for seeing me.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Verna, to speak to your point, I'll just briefly say this before we go on to Marlo. So Marlo, you can unmute yourself and get ready to speak with us. But we are gonna share some resources. We're not gonna follow up all of our weekly webinars with an email, but we will follow up with this one because we have a list of resources and we're not gonna have time to go through all of them. But Verna, you'll see just what you were speaking about, just there's a page of, almost a whole page of bail funds that you can donate to. And that's to bail out. And just to put, for everyone to know, the bail system in place is a whole other conversation of why it was put in place, because a lot of people who can't afford bail are the people of color. And so what's happening, these people are protesting, they're being arrested, and not all of them, some of them are peaceful, as you're probably starting to see on the news, and they're going to jail and they don't have anyone to pay their bail, or they can't afford to pay their bail, some of them. And so there are funds that you can donate to help out with that. So, okay, with that said, Marlo, I see you unmuted. Will you please share with us?
Hello, everybody. Although I understand that both Michelle and Amber, and thank you for doing this, neither of you are activists, but I am. I'm an activist here in LA, and I have been for the last 30 years. And I have the challenge that I'm having is that the sound of the people that are giving us suggestions of how to move forward, it sounds like turning the other cheek. It sounds like, you know, just focus on you, focus on you and just help make sure that you get better. And just to be quite honest, that's not the answer for me right now. I focused on me enough. At this point, I need to focus on us. And I don't agree with, and no disrespect, Miss Michelle, but I don't agree with that if your white counterparts are silent, that you reach out to them. If you're bleeding and you are hurt and you are shot, you should not be the one to reach out to someone else and ask how they're doing. It's their responsibility, if they are your ally, to make sure that you're okay. And just to be totally honest, it's easy as just sending a text or making a call and saying, are you okay? Is everything okay? And I want to say that holding forums like this is super important. And I see that those of you that are not Black, that are on this call, and those of you that are other, maybe you're Latinx, or maybe you are Armenian, or whatever other cultural identity you identify with. It starts by acknowledging the privilege that you receive from not being a Black person, and being able to move with that. This, and being on this platform right now is absolutely a start for you all. It's absolutely a start. The fact that you said, okay, I want to have the conversation, or at least I want to listen into the conversation. I'm sorry, you guys can hear the sirens in the background. But being on this platform is an absolute start, because it says that I'm not afraid to have the conversation. And I commend you all on that. That is by far a huge step in the right direction, because it says I'm willing to listen and I'm willing to talk. So I want to say that, but I also want to say that, you have to make sure that you acknowledge I don't know the word to use, but you acknowledge what you've received, and the fact that you don't get the brunt of it how we do, and acknowledge it, and be able to acknowledge it with your friends, and not only in private, acknowledge it with the people that because sometimes, just to keep it 3,000, sometimes it starts literally at home with our family. Our family may not have the same belief system that we do. They may not have the same way of thinking that we do. And so if we start with them and let it pour out from there, and I would say that's a great start.
Thank you for the share.
Yeah. Michelle, did you want to respond? Portia made a comment that I think is really powerful in the chat that we can follow up with.
Was it relevant to what Marlo just shared?
Yes.
Yeah, why don't you share? Because
So earlier we asked Portia, what would she like someone to say? And so she says, I guess what I expect to hear from my white friends or colleagues is, I do not understand what you may be going through, nor will I ever be able to relate. However, I see what is going on, and as a person that values you or Black lives, I do not support police brutality nor racial discrimination in any way. I stand with you, I support you, I hear you, I support George Floyd and many of the other Black lives that were lost. And she says, for me personally, this would mean a lot, and reassure me that those I work with and call friends acknowledge what's going on and acknowledge how I may be feeling. So
that's...
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I had a little technical.
No, finish.
Just Marlo, thank you for sharing. And I know how passionate you are. Marlo's a friend of mine. I know how passionate you are about what you do. And I just want to clarify that it starts with us. It starts small. And a lot of times people don't know how to start at all. They can't all just go from 0 to 100. They have to start small, and then they start to broaden out, because it is certainly about not helping just ourselves and about helping others. It is most certainly, that is what we're here for. That's why we call this forum. How can we help each other? And how can we hear each other? And how can we understand each other and have more compassion and empathy for each other? And so by learning each other's different perspectives and how each other feels, we are not as afraid to have these conversations. It's my prayer that the 40 or however many people who are on here will go and have multiple conversations with many more people, and that this is something that will spread and be the start of changes within our circles and expand to us collectively. So,
and boy, I can't believe time has just flown by. Before we just quickly touch on the do, I just kind of want to go back. I want to address, your passion, Marlo, and we could hear it, the emotional charges there. And it even goes back to kind of what Desi made reference to, and that is our non-Black sisters and brothers aren't going to get it right. We are not going to get it right all the time. There are no shoulds. I'm telling you, I hear this is not a point counterpoint, but my perspective is to assume that people should do something is just a prescription. So the support that I want to offer is, in order for all of us to kind of stay in our power, if there's an expectation that we have and the other person is not reading our script, don't stand behind and feel the oppression of what we're not receiving. Yes, I think we can be powerful to be able to start the dialogue. And again, in so many instances, with whatever the action is, whether they say something or what they say is wrong, or they're stumbling over their words, or they don't say anything, it's important for us as Black people to allow there to be that platform for us to not take it personally, because otherwise we shut each other down. So, you know, this is an ongoing dilemma of how do we have communication, how do we become so neutral to the point where we're able to kind of hear and educate. It can only happen when we just, you know, kind of show up, when we just show up, you know, with the right answers, sometimes with the wrong answers, etc. So, yeah. Thank you all. Do we have time to do the do part?
Yeah, so it's 1:29, and with your permission, we'd like to go over the do part. Uh-oh.
Do you have the PowerPoint?
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
My computer just totally slowed down and it was sounding crazy, but I'm glad you can hear me, and here is the PowerPoint.
There you go. Okay. So, you know, you and I can both kind of speak to it. We're going to be making this available. Yes, Amber? Of course. Otherwise, you know, people will be taking photos of the image. So first off, I love this quote by Rosa Parks. You must never be fearful about what you're doing when it's right. That speaks to intention. That speaks to intention. We're not always going to get it right. We're not always going to do the right thing, but if our intentions are with the right intentions, you know, we shouldn't be afraid of doing that. So what we provided, and again, you know, again, we're going to publish this, as was spoken by so many people, educate yourself and others. These are a number of websites and organizations that their intention is to shed light on social injustices, or what movement or mission can really kind of help you understand what racial discrimination and oppression really kind of looks like. So, you know, feel free, educate yourself, spend the time, you know, educate your kids. Go to these websites. The next one, this is just a continuation. Join the Grassroots Law Project. Policy, laws need to be put in action. It's not just our behavior, but we need to have, you know, government and things at a local and a community level change, so that, you know, we are bound and protected by certain rights. Go to the next one. Donate. Okay, so this is where we can put our money where our mouth is. As Amber made reference, you know, the national bailout. This is where individuals can literally support some of these grassroots effort, some of these nonprofits that really help to bring about the change. They need funds. Next one. Yes, it's even, you know, if your heart is so inspired to even donate to the George Floyd Memorial Fund, if you want to literally make that very direct and specific contribution. Sign petitions, huge. I mean, it's you know, this is where your voice really comes into play. And we didn't mention it here, but I'm telling you, people, we need to vote. we need to vote. We need to make sure that the leaders that we have in office, from our assembly, council, senators, congressmen, mayors, governors, I mean, know what it is that you want, understand what their platform is, and don't be neutral or ambivalent. Make sure that your vote can bring about the change that's necessary. Next slide. And then these are the signed petition. Next one, I think, is follow.
I'm just going to make a quick comment before we move on to the next. There is, and you'll see he's on follow, Sean King. Sean King was very instrumental in the Ahmaud Arbery case in getting people to call up and to demand that justice be served and that the cops be arrested and charged, or the ex-cop and his son be arrested and charged. And because of the overwhelming number of calls that were made, it actually is showing effect. They're reversing these, with Breonna Taylor, her boyfriend being released because he was being held for attempted murder. The phone calls make a difference. So not only with the petitions, but when you follow some of these folks here that you see on this list, you'll see them post and say, call this number, call that number, take some time and call that number. You want to make a change? They get overwhelmed. They said about Ahmaud Arbery is that they didn't get convicted because they saw the video. It's because we saw the video. So I just want to make that good point. And Michelle, back to you.
Yeah, one point, when I was doing the research, I don't know how many of you on the call, and we're going to make this brief, I promise, have heard of Jane Elliott. Jane Elliott is an 84-year-old school teacher. It's the brown eye, blue eye experiment. And she has basically spent her entire academic career in developing this program specifically for schools, but the message is for non-Black people to really kind of understand the lens of prejudice and how oftentimes, or bias, how subtle it is, how incredibly subtle it is. You know, you may not feel like you are a racist, but there may be just things that you do or say. And, you know, if you ever, you can search her on Google and certainly view her videos on YouTube. Yeah. This is good. Yep. So we thank you. The conversation is not over. It needs to determine if we want to do a follow-up to this, because I'm sure we didn't cover off on all of the points that people may have been hoping that we could touch on. But again, we're encouraging you as you leave this call and go back into your lives to do what you need to do in order to bring about change.
Yes. So thank you all for joining us. And I'm just going to close us out before we go. Michelle, that was such a great conversation that we were able to have. We're grateful that for everyone who shared. We're grateful for everyone who showed up. There's a few more of you who are on here, and I'm looking at you and I wish that you could contribute. Dan, you're leaning in. You're one of them because you do amazing talks on empathy and understanding. But we're going to ask that if there are any other resources that anyone has to share, that you share them with us through email. You can email me at hello@39quartz.com. You can also respond to the emails that you get these notifications through as well. And we are going to post this video on our blogs. Feel free to continue the conversation within the blog space as well, and on our websites.
You want to repeat, you want to share with what our websites are, just in case?
Yes. So Michelle.
Yeah, so my website is Into Action, that's spelled INTU, actioncoaching.com. And again, yeah, I mean, and then Amber, yours is?
Yes, and mine is quartzwellnesscollective.com, and it's QUARTZ, wellnesscollective.com. And we appreciate this conversation, and we welcome you to continue this with us, and also to continue with us next week. Verna, you can wave. who spoke. Verna's she had today, and then she was so flexible as to be able to reschedule for next week because we decided to focus on this today because this discussion was so timely. Verna will be joining us next week, and we'll do a session where we discuss balance and healing, and just coming to a point of balance and healing in our lives. And so we're going to talk about that. And then we're also going to do a yoga session with Verna. So come in your stretch or your active clothes and join us so we can heal together. And we have our other topics for lists on our sign up page that you can see in the email that we sent to you. You can go there and see our schedule of everything we have lined up for June. You can also watch the replays from our past weekly Wednesday Lunch and Learns. The link, all of that is in the email. It's also a place to donate to us if you feel so generous as to do so. We thank everyone for the donations that have come in the last week and before that. It's very kind of you to support us in continuing. You don't have to, but we always love when you show a little love. So let's all show each other a lot of love. Let's show each other a lot more compassion and understanding. And let's not let the divisiveness divide us. There are good people on both sides. We cannot blanket statement. We cannot prejudge.
That's
and I
right.
learned that even deeper from joining us today.
And I'll add just one last thing before we all leave the Zoom call. We are open and receptive to hearing from any of you topics that you would like us to touch on. Amber and I are committed to this process. We may have the topics already organized and planned out for the balance of June and July. But again, email us and let us know how we might be able to kind of thank you.
Yes. I think your signal may have broken up. I'm not sure if that was just for me or if it was for everyone, but we, just to be clear, Michelle was sharing with us that we want to hear your topics, so shoot them over to us in short. So now that we're almost 10 minutes past, we're going to bid you farewell, but our hearts are still with you and we appreciate you all for showing up. Lots of love to you all, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.